he really was the most important single human being in my life during a very important period of my life.
At the age of 82, Stefanie Powers has finally broken her silence after more than 40 years in her latest interview with CNN. Stefanie decided to reveal the untold secrets about William Holden, the man who loved her with all the intensity of a lost soul. They were together for 9 short years, but those were the only years Holden ever found a trace of peace amid a life drowned in alcohol scandal and self-destruction. People saw him smile on screen, basking in glamour, but only Stefanie knew that behind every filming day were trembling nights when liquor mixed with a loneliness so deep it bordered on despair. Now, she can no longer keep that secret because some truths, no matter how painful, deserve to be lived again. In the end, Holden died alone in his small apartment, his head striking the bedside table, passing away without anyone knowing. Stefanie Powers had been by his side during his final days, had seen the light in his eyes fade away, and loved him still, even when that love was torn apart by fate. Now, in her twilight years, she says, "I tell this story, not to seek pity, but so he can be remembered as he truly was beautiful, fragile, and unbearably human." One Holden was the deepest lover in the brief but eternal span of my life. In her latest interview with CNN, Stefanie Powers sat quietly under the soft studio lights, her eyes drifting toward the distant void, as if searching for the shadow of a faraway past. She smiled faintly, but her eyes held untold stories. "There are things about Bill that I've never told anyone," she whispered, her voice low and mysterious. "About who he really was, about the years we shared, and about the things he kept hidden. Today I will reveal all those secrets." When Stefanie first met William Holden in 1973, she didn't realize that her life would be forever changed by a single glance. In a warm, golden-lit room, at a party surrounded by laughter and clinking glasses, he appeared a figure familiar to the entire world. Yet his eyes rested on her with a private stillness, as though the world outside that room had ceased to exist. She remembered how her heart skipped a strange, trembling rhythm she had never felt before. And in that moment, Stefanie knew he had seen her. Not Stefanie Powers, the young star, but a woman made of both fragility and unspoken longing. Their subsequent meetings, seemingly coincidental, carried a sense of destiny. At a bookstore, when he smiled shyly and introduced himself, "Hi, I'm Bill Holden," Stefanie felt something stir within her. It wasn't the words, but the way he stood there, gentle, unassuming, that drew her into a world meant only for two. Their early conversations were simple: a book, a smile, a cup of tea. But to Stefanie, each moment felt like a small miracle, and those fragments etched themselves deeply into her heart. They began spending quiet days, walking, drinking tea, talking about distant things, nature, childhood memories. Stefanie was young, passionate, while William, in his 50s, carried both the glow of the spotlight and his own shadows. Yet their age difference melted away during long afternoons by the lake, listening to the wind and the rustle of leaves. He spoke of his ranch in Kenya, where he found peace, and she felt a yearning within her to step into that world, to live with him, even if only for fleeting moments. Their shared journeys became a rhythm of their love, though never flaunted. They wandered through Kenya's golden plains, cared for wild animals together, and slept under starry skies. Stefanie said that in those quiet nights, when the moonlight touched his face, she could see a part of his soul that no one else could reach. Their love required few words, just a touch of the hand, a hand on the shoulder, a fleeting smile, and each said, "What words never could I see you, and you see me." He was not perfect, and she knew that. William wrestled with alcohol, haunted by his private darkness. But Stefanie never walked away. She sat beside him in silence, without judgment, only listening. On long nights, lying on the couch in their Beverly Hills home or on the red earth of Kenya, she listened to his breathing and to the wind outside the window, whispering to herself, "I will be here for him, for myself, for this love." Each time she looked at him, she realized that true love isn't always perfect, but it is what makes one feel most alive. Their love carried a strange serenity. They didn't need to perform, nor bask in stage lights. Their talks about animals' forests and the journeys they dreamed of taking made Stefanie's heart tremble, and she felt truly herself. He spoke of childhood, of failures and stumbles. She spoke of unfinished dreams. Through every story and every laugh, their love deepened, simple yet profound, quiet yet searing. They never officially married. Stefanie once said it wasn't for lack of love, but because of distances that couldn't be erased. Age, responsibilities, the darkness he carried. Yet the love remained whole. It needed no ring, no vow, and still weighed enough for her to know she had chosen the right man at the right time. Every day, together, even a silent afternoon, in their small room, she felt cherished, and that was worth more than any ceremony. Through those years, Stefanie learned to let go, to slow down, to find peace in his presence. But joy, as she once said, always fades. Holden was the deepest lover in the brief but eternal span of my life. A love so radiant, yet fate denied them completion. Holden's tragic death closed that chapter forever. 2. Bill, don't leave like this. I need you. After those happy years, Stefanie never forgot the feeling of seeing him smile for the last time, that rare peace in his eyes. She remembered that day vividly, the soft, golden light filling the small room where they shared tea and talked about unfinished travels. "Bill, don't let me lose you," she whispered to herself, though deep down she knew life doesn't always heed our pleas. So, when the news of Holden's death came, Stefanie froze in an endless moment. She heard her heart pounding, her breath turning heavy, as if the world had collapsed around her. His death came not from illness or old age, but from a simple, brutal accident, a reminder of how fragile life is, how even the fiercest love can be torn apart in an instant. He had apparently tripped over a throw rug after drinking heavily with a blood alcohol level of about 0.22%. The fall caused him to strike his head on a bedside table, the impact so strong it pushed the table back and pierced the wall. The main injury was a deep forehead laceration, and Holden bled to death. It happened while he was alone, with no one there to help, making it all the more tragic. Evidence suggested he remained conscious for at least half an hour, but never called for help, perhaps not realizing how grave the injury was. When Stefanie heard the news, she imagined him alone in his Santa Monica apartment, tripping, falling, striking his head, that cruel, merciless moment that stole him from her world. "No, it can't be," she whispered inside. But the scream never left her chest. Everything felt powerless, and Stefanie knew she could not save him. In the days that followed, she kept asking herself, was he in pain? Was anyone with him? In her heart, she saw Holden sitting silently on the floor, motionless, and the image haunted her. Stefanie looked through their photos, holding hands on their travels, and every happy moment now seemed as fragile as glass. She recalled every detail, every smile, every last touch. She whispered, her voice trembling, "Bill, don't leave like this. I need you." But her words fell into silence, unable to reach him. She felt an abyss open inside her, as though the world had lost its color. Holden's death left her not only grief, but also a silent fury, a helpless rage that no words could soothe. Why did life take him so suddenly? She sat alone in their empty room, clutching their keepsakes, tears flowing, filled with love, despair, and regret. Every vivid memory of him, his laughter, his eyes, his hands, became a lingering ache. She remembered how he once brushed her hair back, how he looked at her as though she were the whole world, and now all that remained was memory. "I'm still here, Bill. I'm still waiting," she whispered, hoping he could somehow hear from another world. She thought of the emptiness he left behind, the afternoons. They never spent, the talks left unfinished, the journeys never begun. She felt a loneliness deeper than death itself, not only because he was gone, but because a part of her soul had gone with him, leaving a scar that would never fade. Every day after his death, Stefanie carried his shadow in every action, every word, every step. She turned her pain into strength to keep living, but the sharp ache never left whenever she thought of Holden, the man who had possessed her heart in such a brief yet blazing time. She told herself that this love, though it ended in tragedy, was still the most precious gift of her life. "You were strong, Bill, even in the way you left. I'll keep you in my heart forever," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. An immortal promise, a wound that would never heal. 3. I still hear you in the waves, in every wind, and I will keep my promise to you. After William Holden's death, Stefanie Powers' life split in two. One half still wandering in the past, the other forced to stand and go on. At first, she couldn't bear the silence of the apartment, the empty chair where he once sat, the echo of his voice. But amid the grief, she realized if she truly loved him, she had to live the part of life he hadn't finished. Some morning, Stefanie sat by the window, looking out at the sea and whispering, "I still hear you, Bill, in the waves, in every wind." She refused to let memory become a grave. She wanted to make it something living, something that could save. During sleepless nights, she recalled his stories of Kenya, of nature, of animals. He said, had more soul than most people. From those words, the idea of a place bearing his name began to bloom. When Stefanie set foot in Kenya for the first time after Holden's death, she felt him walking beside her. The land breathed of him, wild, free, sacred. She walked along the red dirt roads, under the blazing sun, yet felt a strange warmth inside. "You're here, aren't you?" she whispered into the air. She knew that their love, though ended by death, still lived in every breath of the world. The William Holden Wildlife Foundation was born from that love, a flame that refused to die. Stefanie became its head, though she never called herself president. She simply said, "I'm keeping his promise." Every brick, every sapling planted was a whispered thank you. She wanted the world to know that Holden was more than an actor. He was a man who loved nature, loved life, and that love deserved to live on. At night, standing on the Kenyan highlands, Stefanie looked up at the stars. Their light reminded her of Holden's eyes, bright yet sad, strong yet fragile. "Would you be proud of me?" she asked softly. And for a moment, the wind answered. Tears rolled down her cheeks, no longer of despair, but of gratitude. As time passed, Stefanie continued acting. Every role, every smile on stage, she treated as a greeting to him. Sometimes, she thought she saw his shadow among the audience. That familiar smile flickering under the lights. Though she knew it was an illusion, she smiled anyway, because to her, Holden had never truly left. "You're not gone, Bill," she once said in an interview. "You've just gone somewhere I can't reach yet." People called Stefanie strong, but only she knew that strength was born of pain. No one survives loss intact, but she chose to live in a way that preserved the beauty of what once was. Standing among the children in Kenya, teaching them to love the forest, the earth she felt, Holden watching from somewhere, smiling content. She often told their story. When asked, "I once loved a man, and he taught me what it means to live responsibly in this world." Her voice trembled, but her eyes shone. That love, though, short, left in her a strange vitality, the kind born from those who have walked through hell and still know how to plant seeds of life. In her later years, Stefanie looked back and realized Holden had never truly died. He lived in every classroom in Kenya, in every child she guided, in every birdsong at dawn. She lived as though he had merely gone away, and one day at sunset, she would see him again, walking toward her, the same smile, the same eyes, the same warm hand that once held hers. "I kept my promise, Bill," she whispered, as the day's last light fell. "You live in everything I do. And if there's anything beautiful in my life, it's that I loved you." 4. He lived his whole life in front of the camera, but never for himself. At the age of 82, yet every time Stefanie Powers mentioned William Holden, she often fell silent for a long while, as if within her memories of him were still a storm that had never truly passed. She had loved a man as brilliant as the sun, and had also watched that light fade gradually amid alcohol and loneliness. Now, in her twilight years, whenever she looks back, she not only remembers the man she loved, but also feels sorrow for the wounds life left on his soul. Stefanie had witnessed the clinking of glasses, Holden's hoarse, half-drunk laughter. "I'm fine, Steph," he once said, his voice trembling from alcohol. "I just need a little to forget." But she knew it wasn't forgetfulness, it was escape. Escape from the obsessions, escape from the pain of his first marriage. That was when the tragedies began. William Holden and Brenda Marshall met in the early 1940s as he was rising to become a shining star of Hollywood. She was an elegant actress with classical beauty and calm composure, in contrast to his free-spirited, fiery nature. They married in 1941 in Las Vegas, a simple but lively ceremony, and Holden adopted Brenda's child from a previous relationship. At the time, everyone thought it was a solid marriage between two artistic souls. Brenda withdrew from the film sets, choosing the role of wife and mother, while Holden threw himself into work with all passion and ambition. But the more famous he became, the further he drifted from his family. Long shoots abroad, post-film parties, and endless late-night drinking gradually removed him from their small home in California. "I have to work, Bren," he often said, eyes distant, his voice tinged with fatigue. Brenda did not object. She understood his world, but not the loneliness corroding her own heart. Some nights, she waited for him in silence, listening to the clock tick, while her husband's laughter echoed somewhere far away at Hollywood parties. Alcohol became Holden's companion and the silent third party that slowly destroyed their marriage. Whenever he returned home, he drank to reassure himself, to temporarily forget the pressures of fame. Brenda would watch him slump on the sofa, eyes hollow, hand still clutching a glass of whiskey. She once held his hand gently and whispered, "Do you know, I'm still here?" Holden only smiled faintly. "I know. But sometimes knowing isn't enough." Those words stayed with Brenda for life. They lived together for more than 30 years, but most of that time was as estranged partners, a marriage on paper, but with souls long dried up. In his later years, as the glamour faded, Holden became even more lost. Roles no longer brought joy, only obligation. He had fleeting affairs with co-stars, partly out of weakness, partly out of fear of being forgotten. Brenda, exhausted by loneliness, no longer held on. In 1971, they officially divorced, ending 3 decades of union with a heavy silence. After his marriage with Brenda, Marshall ended, William Holden found a new light in his life. The French actress, Capucine, fragile in beauty and shadowed in soul like himself. They met in 1962 on the set of The Lion in Africa, amid fiery sunsets and the wind whistling through the savannah. Both were lonely, both carried unspoken wounds. Holden was drawn into Capucine's quiet, while she was captivated by the sorrow in his eyes. They lived together for many years, a life seemingly peaceful, but actually full of undercurrents. The tragedy began when Capucine was diagnosed as infertile. For Holden, it was a deep wound. He had always longed for more children, as a way to reclaim what was lost in family life. That disappointment drove him deeper into alcohol. According to a Rabbit's Foot 2024, when drunk, Holden became jealous, irritable, even violent, causing their love to distort. Capucine, sensitive and vulnerable, could no longer endure it. In 1969, they parted in silence. No blame, only weary, lost glances. After leaving Capucine, Holden sank into severe depression. Alcohol was no longer pleasure, but an anesthetic to forget. When Capucine committed suicide in 1990, many said Holden, though deceased nearly a decade prior, still lingered in her shadows. In his will, he left Capucine $50,000 as a belated attempt at atonement. That love, with all its collapse and regret, remained one of the deepest wounds of Holden's life, a beautiful love gnawed by alcohol and loneliness to the core. Later, after so much brokenness, only Stefanie, who stayed by his side, saw clearly the dark side behind that light. Mornings when he woke, hands trembling, face weary, as if aged decades, she would embrace him from behind, press her cheek to his shoulder, whispering, "I'm here for you." He would reply, "You don't understand, Steph. Some things men can't put into words." And then he would reach for the bottle again. The only friend he trusted would never betray him. She had seen him hide bottles in drawers, in suitcases, even under car seats. He promised, then broke his promise, swearing he wouldn't drink again, then returning to drunkenness. Stefanie didn't get angry, only sad. She knew he wasn't just addicted to alcohol. He was addicted to pain, addicted to the feeling of self-punishment for the things he could not fix. Sometimes in drunken moments, Holden spoke of the past, his broken marriage roles he didn't want, but had to perform, lonely nights in hotel rooms where the clock's ticking felt like torture. "I've lived my whole life in front of the camera," he said, "but never for myself." Those words haunted Stefanie for years. She understood that fame had stolen from him the most precious thing, peace. Once Stefanie remembered he sat on the balcony, a glass of whiskey in hand, watching the sunset over the ocean. She approached, took his hand and said, "You know the world still needs you." He turned, eyes dimming in the evening light. "The world only needs the memory of me, Steph. The rest has burned away." That day, she said nothing more. She knew that within him the flame had truly gone out. Later, when he passed, Stefanie realized that the battle within Holden was fiercer than any role. He had fought himself, a man who wanted both to live and to disappear. Whenever she read old articles about his accidental death while drunk, her heart felt constricted. People only saw the surface tragedy, but she knew Holden had been dying long before, slowly, in loneliness, in exhaustion, in self-torment. Stefanie never blamed him. On the contrary, she felt more compassion than ever. For in every tragedy, she still saw a beautiful soul just unable to find its way home. "You weren't weak," she once told him, in her mind. "You were just tired in a world too loud." Perhaps that was why she still loved him, loved the fragile part he hid, loved the brokenness in eyes that seemed unyielding. Now, when she looks back, Stefanie no longer cries. Pain has become compassion. Compassion has become understanding. She recounts their story, not to evoke pity, but to remind that sometimes the strongest people are the most suffering. In her heart, Holden still lives, not the perfect man, but a real human being with all his mistakes, sins, and the passionate love he once gave. Five. The final will. Why didn't you leave anything for me? After Holden's death, Stefanie Powers still remembered clearly the day she held the newspaper announcing William Holden's will, eyes blurred as she scanned the list of heirs. 9 years by his side, sharing every joy and sorrow, every faraway trip and moonlit nights in Kenya, yet her name was nowhere in that will. She quietly set the paper down, hands trembling. "Bill, why didn't you leave anything for me?" she whispered into the empty room, as if he could answer from somewhere. In the following days, Stefanie revisited the keepsakes Holden had given her: an old watch, a few handwritten letters, several books he loved. She touched each line of writing, feeling as if his breath still lingered there. Yet the pain tugged at her, not for money, but for the sense of being left behind. He had chosen to prioritize his children, ex-wife, and charities, as if preserving old ties, and respected her by not dragging her into legal matters. Yet Stefanie couldn't help feeling empty inside. She remembered sitting with him on the veranda of the Santa Monica villa, talking about conservation projects, about elephants in Kenya, about his passions and loneliness. Holden never said outright that he would leave her nothing, and Stefanie understood it was his way of showing respect, not wanting her to contest the past. But standing alone in the empty room, she could not hide her sense of loss. "I lived by your side for 9 years, and yet," she sighed, eyes brimming. It took many years for Stefanie to accept this. At 83, she smiled softly, whispering, "He left me nothing, but I have everything that matters. His memory, his love, and a reason to keep living." And in the pain, in the emptiness, Stefanie realized her strength did not come from a will or wealth, but from the enduring and unconditional love they once shared. 6. I have lived, loved, and bravely overcome all pain. Her childhood was predestined for hardship. Stefanie was born into a troubled family with divorced parents, where she learned independence, confidence, and strength from an early age. "I have to stand firm," she told herself as a child, surrounded by the darkness of loneliness and fear. From ballet classes to lessons with Jerome Robbins to watching Hollywood stars, out the window, Stefanie learned to survive in a world where every spotlight shone directly on her. Entering the film industry, Stefanie quickly felt its harshness. Under Columbia Pictures, then 20th Century Fox, she learned to forge herself to stand beside icons like John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara. "Don't let the light overshadow yourself," she often reminded herself while taking small roles in McClintock or Experiment in Terror. Those years shaped her unwavering courage, determination, and desire to shine through talent, not just beauty. The role of April Dancer in The Girl from UN's Cell was her first stepping stone into television, Yet Stefanie knew true fame had not yet arrived. She remembered long nights reading scripts, memorizing lines, practicing expressions in the mirror. "I will not just be an image on screen," she whispered to herself, eyes glinting with resolve. Then stepping into Heart, she knew she had found her place. Jennifer, Hart was not just a TV character. She was a symbol of intelligence, charm, and modern feminine strength equal to her partner in every challenging situation. Alongside that glamour, Stefanie also experienced relationships and personal trials. Her marriage to Gary Lockwood was a lesson in balancing love and self-attachment and freedom. Entering a relationship with William Holden, Stefanie loved not only a man, but also the depth of his inner world, his loneliness, passion, and sometimes his tragedy. After Holden's death, she married Patrick Huit de la Chesnaise in 1993, but divorced in 1999, and later had a long-term relationship with Thomas Carroll until his death in 2014. Stefanie never had biological children, but considered the conservation work she did with Holden a way to nurture life in her own meaningful way. In 2008, Stefanie Powers was diagnosed with a rare lung cancer, alveolar cell carcinoma. She underwent surgery to remove part of her right lung and fortunately recovered, continuing her active life. This period was a great trial, but also a testament to her resilient spirit. Stefanie refused to let illness define her. She continued participating in artistic activities, charitable events, and wildlife conservation, becoming a role model of perseverance. In her later years, Stefanie Powers sat quietly, looking back on her journey, eyes steadfast, yet full of emotion. She said, "I have lived, strongly loved, and overcome all pain." Those words summed up her life, from an unstable childhood, losses in love, to health challenges and personal tragedies. Today, Stefanie still lives in Los Angeles, actively involved in social and wildlife conservation work, maintaining the image of an elegant, independent, and energetic actress. She is living proof of an indomitable spirit, continuing life with passion, love, and steadfastness. When Stefanie Powers looked back on the years with William Holden, she opened her heart to tell the truth about him, his strength, charm, and the quiet tragedies few knew. She acknowledged that love and loneliness, alcoholism, and life choices shaped a man, both great and vulnerable. What Stefanie leaves her audience is not only romantic stories, but also a reminder of the value of love, perseverance, and cherishing moments with those we love. Have you ever wondered, in a busy life full of glitz, if you truly understand the person beside you? If Stefanie Powers' story with William Holden has touched your heart, subscribe to the channel to not miss more stories of cinema love and real-life tragedy. Share your thoughts in the comments. We would love to hear your reflections and questions about the people who made Hollywood history. Thank you for joining us, and let's explore untold secrets, loves, and life lessons together.